It all started as a perfectly ordinary day. My alarm went off at 7 a.m., like it always did. The soft, steady beeping filled the quiet of my apartment, pulling me out of my dreams. I groaned, stretching my arms above my head and rubbing the sleep from my eyes. The morning light streamed through the curtains, casting a golden glow across the room. I sat on the edge of the bed for a moment, listening to the distant sounds of the city coming to life outside my window. Car horns, people walking by, the faint hum of traffic. Everything felt peaceful, just like every other weekday morning. My routine was simple and familiar. I headed for the shower first, letting the hot water wake me up as steam filled the small bathroom. Afterward, I made myself a cup of strong black coffee, the kind that jolts you awake. While the coffee brewed, I scrolled through my phone, checking emails, scrolling through social media, and glancing at the day's news. It was the same routine I followed every morning, and there was something comforting about that. I didn't bother with breakfast as usual. I grabbed a granola bar and stuffed it into my bag as I headed out the door. The cool morning air hit my face as I stepped outside. The city was already awake, buzzing with activity. People rushed past me, heading to work, their faces buried in their phones. The bus stop was just a short walk from my apartment, and I found my usual spot near the back of the line. The bus arrived right on time, and I boarded, finding my usual seat by the window. As we moved through the city, I watched the streets go by, thinking about the workday ahead. When I arrived at the office, the rush hour had already died down. The energy in the building was different now, calmer, more focused. The sound of people typing on keyboards filled the space, along with the occasional murmur of phone calls and conversations. I walked to my desk, passing a few co-workers who gave me tired nods and dropped my bag on the floor next to my chair. The routine was unpredictable as ever. I powered up my computer and glanced at the to-do list that was already forming in my mind. Everything seemed perfectly normal. Just another day in the office. The minutes ticked by as I answered emails, checked project updates, and shuffled through paperwork. It wasn't until lunchtime that I finally got a break. At noon, I met up with Lena, my best friend and lunch buddy. We always made time to catch up during lunch, no matter how busy the day was. The cafeteria was packed, as usual, with people chatting over trays of food and the clatter of dishes filling the air. I liked the noise. It made the office feel more alive, less monotonous. Lena was already sitting at our usual table. Her blonde hair pulled back into a neat ponytail, a playful smile on her face. I plopped down across from her with my salad and sighed. "So what's the latest gossip?" Lena asked, her eyes twinkling as she stabbed a piece of lettuce with her fork. I laughed and shook my head. "Not much. Same old stuff. Tom from IT was late again this morning. And Jenna, you know how she is, had a meltdown because the projector wasn't working during her presentation." Lena grinned. "Oh, poor Jenna. What would we do without her daily freakouts? I swear, if the wind blows the wrong way, she loses it." I chuckled, picturing Jenna's usual overreactions. Yeah, she was practically in tears this morning. You should have seen it. She was pacing around the conference room, trying to fix the slides, and Tom was just standing there, completely clueless. Lena rolled her eyes. Of course he was. Typical Tom. We spent the rest of lunch chatting about office gossip, the new HR policies that everyone was grumbling about, and our plans for the weekend. Lena was planning a day trip out of town, while I had nothing exciting on my agenda except for maybe sleeping in and binge-watching a new series. "Oh," Lena said suddenly, her eyes widening with excitement. "Did I tell you about what happened to that guy on the 12th floor last night?" I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "No, what happened?" Lena leaned in closer, lowering her voice as if she was about to tell me a big secret. "Apparently, he got stuck in the stairwell after hours. The lights went out, and he couldn't see a thing. He was trapped in the dark for like an hour before someone came and found him." A shiver ran down my spine at the thought. Seriously? That sounds terrifying. Was he alone? Lena nodded, her expression serious now. "Yeah, completely alone. He said it was pitch black, and he couldn't even see his own hand in front of his face." I shivered again. That's exactly why I hate staying late at the office. It's creepy enough when it's empty, but being stuck in the dark like that? No, thank you. Lena grinned, clearly enjoying my discomfort. "Yeah, I guess you won't be staying late tonight then, huh?" I laughed, but a part of me couldn't shake the unease that settled in my stomach. Still, I brushed it off. It was just a story after all. Things like that didn't happen to me. After lunch, we went our separate ways. As I sat back down at my desk, the thought of the guy trapped in the stairwell kept coming back to me. I imagined him standing there, alone in the dark, waiting for someone to find him. The office suddenly felt a little too quiet, a little too still. I pushed the thought aside and got back to work. There were emails to send, reports to finish, and a project that needed my attention. The afternoon dragged on, and by 3 p.m. I was starting to feel the weight of the day settling on my shoulders. That's when my boss, Mr. Carter, called me into his office. He was a tough but fair boss. He didn't sugarcoat things, but if you worked hard, he respected you. "Maya, I need you to finish that project by tonight," he said without looking up from his computer. I was surprised. "Tonight?" I hadn't planned on staying late. "Yeah, I know it's last minute, but we have a big client presentation tomorrow. Can you handle it?" I nodded. "I'll stay as long as it takes." "Good," he said, finally glancing up. "I knew I could count on you." And just like that, my evening plans were thrown out the window. I headed back to my desk, mentally preparing myself for a long night. The office was still busy, but I could feel the energy shifting. People were finishing up their work, ready to head home. By the time 6 p.m. rolled around, the office was nearly empty. I kept working, typing away at my computer, the soft glow of the monitor, the only light in the dimly lit office. The minutes stretched into hours, and soon it was 8 p.m. By then, the building was almost deserted. The usual sounds of the office, phones ringing, people chatting, had faded, replaced by the occasional creak of the elevator or the distant hum of the air conditioning. The emptiness made me feel a little uneasy, but I pushed through it. I was determined to finish the project no matter how late it got. Around 9 p.m. I took a break. I stood up, stretching my stiff legs, and decided to head down the hallway to grab a coffee. The hallway was dimly lit, and my footsteps echoed loudly in the silence. I couldn't help but think about what Lena had said earlier about the guy getting stuck in the stairwell. The thought of being alone in the dark sent another shiver down my spine. As I waited for the coffee to brew, I pulled out my phone and sent Lena a quick text. "Still here. Looks like it's going to be a late one." A few seconds later, my phone buzzed with her reply. Ugh, you poor thing. I'm already in bed. I smiled at her message. Lena always knew how to make me feel better, even when I was buried in work. After grabbing my coffee, I headed back to my desk and got back to work. The hours ticked by slowly. By 10:30 p.m., the building was eerily quiet. I had finished the report and sent it off to Mr. Carter, feeling relieved that the work was finally done. I packed up my things, grabbed my coat, and made my way to the elevator. The soft hum of the lights and the occasional creak of the elevator were the only sounds in the building now. The air felt heavy, and the quietness made me feel on edge. I didn't like staying this late, and I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that something was off. When the elevator doors opened, I stepped inside, pressing the button for the ground floor. As the elevator descended, I glanced at my reflection in the metal walls. My face looked tired, shadows under my eyes from the long day. I couldn't wait to get home, take a hot shower, and crawl into bed. Little did I know, the real nightmare was just about to begin. As I stepped out of the elevator and into the lobby, a cold gust of wind blew through the front doors, sending a shiver down my spine. The building felt emptier than usual. The receptionist had long gone home, and the only sound was the faint humming of the lights above. I wrapped my coat tighter around me, quickening my pace as I made my way outside. The night was cold and still. The city, usually so full of life, seemed to be holding its breath. The streets were nearly empty. Just a few late-night commuters rushing to catch the last buses, and a couple of taxis idling by the curb. I pulled out my phone and opened the ride-sharing app. I was too tired to deal with the bus. A taxi was faster, and all I wanted was to get home, crawl into bed, and forget about this long day. I watched as the app notified me that my driver, Sam, was just 2 minutes away. I stood on the curb, rubbing my arms to fight off the cold, barely noticing when the yellow taxi pulled up in front of me. The headlights cut through the fog that had begun to roll in, casting eerie shadows along the empty street. I opened the door, slid into the back seat, and let out a tired sigh. I could already picture my warm bed waiting for me at home. "Evening," I muttered, giving a polite nod to the driver as I settled into the seat. Sam, the driver, barely glanced at me. He gave a short grunt of acknowledgement, his face hidden in the shadow of the rearview mirror. There was something off about his demeanor, but I was too exhausted to think much of it. I just wanted to get home. At first, everything seemed fine. We drove through the familiar city streets, the buildings whizzing by in a blur of lights and shadows. I leaned my head against the window, watching the world outside as my mind wandered back over the events of the day. Lena's jokes, Mr. Carter's deadline, the strange quietness of the office late at night. I felt my body start to relax, my eyes growing heavy. But then something changed. The taxi took an unexpected turn. The familiar streets began to fade, replaced by darker, quieter areas. I sat up, suddenly alert, my heart beating a little faster. I glanced at the GPS on my phone. We weren't on the usual route. A cold feeling crept up my spine as I watched the buildings outside become sparser. The street lights fewer and farther between. I double-checked the app. This wasn't a shortcut. We were heading in the wrong direction. I leaned forward, my voice cutting through the silence in the car. Excuse me. This isn't the usual way home." Sam glanced at me through the rearview mirror, his eyes meeting mine for just a second. There was something strange in the way he looked at me. A cold, flat stare that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. "Construction on the main road," he said, his voice low and almost mechanical. "This is faster." I nodded slowly, but the uneasy feeling in my stomach didn't go away. Something wasn't right. My hands gripped my phone tightly as I quickly texted Lena. "Driver is taking a weird route. Stay on call." She replied almost instantly. "Weird how? Are you okay?" I didn't answer right away. I was too focused on the dark, unfamiliar streets outside. The city lights had faded, replaced by long, empty stretches of road, and I realized we were heading into an industrial area. The buildings were old and abandoned, the streetlights flickering dimly overhead. There were no people around, no cars, just the eerie quiet of the night. My heart started pounding in my chest. I tried to stay calm, telling myself it was just a detour. Maybe he really was avoiding construction. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. The taxi slowed down as we turned onto a deserted road, lined with empty warehouses. My breath caught in my throat as the car rolled into a parking lot. A cracked, broken lot with no lights and no sign of life. "Why are we stopping?" I asked, my voice shaking slightly, as I tried to keep calm. Sam didn't answer right away. He shifted in his seat, his hand reaching for the door handle. "Just need to check something under the hood," he muttered. I swallowed hard, feeling my pulse race. My eyes darted to the locked doors. There was no one around. Not a single car. Not a single person. We were completely alone. This was it. Something terrible was about to happen. I acted quickly. My fingers flew across my phone screen, dialing Lena as I raced it to my ear. "Hey," I said loudly, my voice forced and steady. "Yeah, I see you. I'm just a block away. Can you see the taxi?" Sam froze, his hand hovering over the door handle. He glanced back at me through the rearview mirror, his eyes narrowing slightly. I could feel him watching me, trying to figure out if I was bluffing. "Yeah, I'm almost there," I said, my heart pounding in my chest. "I see you. Just stay where you are." For a long, tense moment, neither of us moved. The air in the taxi felt heavy, thick with fear. I kept my eyes locked on his in the mirror, willing myself to stay calm, to keep up the act. Then, without a word, Sam slowly let go of the door handle. He turned back to the wheel, his face unreadable as the engine roared to life again. The taxi pulled back onto the road, leaving the empty parking lot behind. I didn't stop my fake conversation. "Yeah, just a few more minutes," I said, forcing a smile onto my face, even though my hands were trembling. "I'll be out in a sec." We drove back onto the main road, and I felt a surge of relief wash over me as I saw familiar streets once again. My apartment building came into view, and the moment the taxi slowed down, I pushed the door open before the car had even fully stopped. I bolted out of the car, my breath coming in short, panicked bursts. My hands were shaking as I fumbled with my keys, glancing back over my shoulder to see if Sam was still watching. He was. The taxi sat idling at the curb, his cold eyes staring at me through the rearview mirror. I rushed inside my building, slamming the door shut behind me and locking every bolt in place. I leaned against the door, my heart still racing, trying to calm down. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was Lena. "Are you okay? Should I call someone?" Her message read. I stared at it for a second. then slowly typed back, "I'm home. I'm safe." But even as I typed the words, I didn't feel safe. I walked over to the window, my hands still trembling, and peeked through the curtains. The taxi was still there, parked just down the street, its headlights glowing faintly in the darkness. Sam was still inside, his figure barely visible in the shadows. He was waiting. I quickly closed the curtains, stepping back from the window. The apartment felt cold, and the silence weighed heavy on me. I double-checked the locks on the door, but the feeling of unease wouldn't leave. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't stop thinking about the look in his eyes. That cold, emotionless stare, like he had planned something I narrowly escaped. I never took a taxi alone at night again.
Your progress doesn't end here. To continue advancing your English skills, click on the next video or explore the additional videos we've thoughtfully selected for you.